drain out, like the sap of a maple, you know, drains out for sugar. Well, the sweet gum tree will drain gum out of a cut in it. And so we kept one all the time, a big gap so big cut into a sweet gum tree. And many, many evenings after we were dismissed from work and after supper, we would go down to the sweet gum tree and get us a piece of chewing gum. And you could chew it almost indefinitely.
It was a little harder than the
Yeah,
average chewing gum.
more like wax sort of.
Uh-huh.
But that was our chewing gum, because we never bought chewing gum. That was
didn't know that about the sweet gum tree at all.
yeah.
If we ever get down into such
we called it our
Old Ridge again, I'll see if that tree's still there.
We call it our chewing gum tree, and that's what we used it for. All the children ran to the tree to get their chewing gum. Had perpetual chewing gum.
And your chewing gum tree was at the Old Ridge. That's where.
Also, the
It's a 3-acre
Do
field.
you think you'd remember where it was?
Oh, I know
after
where
that?
it is. Of course, the whole thing may be grown up now. But,
Well, I expect it's either grown up or.
and then of course we had our homemade toothbrushes.
How did you make a toothbrush?
What kind of wood? We chose certain
It was
woods.
black gum. I thought, man, take a piece and chew the end of it.
You would
Get
cut
it
your little
fried.
stick about so long, and then you would just chew and chew and chew that end, and it would not
So
come
it
to
frayed.
pieces. It would fray
That was
and
a-
become a bit like the end of a rope, only stiffer.
Uh-huh.
That was a women's
And-
snuff dipper.
Nearly all women who dip stuff used that kind of.
Yeah, you have it wet and wobble it around in it.
That was a snuff stick, but we used them actually for toothbrushes too. Some.
But it was basically the same kind of
Right.
Same
thing that
you would
used to-
choose a certain wood which had no flavor to it of its own.
Mhm.
Don't you
particular-
believe 50% of the women dipping snuff use one of those
Oh
brushes?
yes, that was
At
the
least
traditional
50% or
way
more,
of getting
huh?
your snuff out of your snuff box. Was
Hey,
to
just-
wet your swab,
And keep in your mouth for a half a day at a time.
and they would even hang those sticks in their mouth, you know, as they. Now women don't know, but
How common was snuff dipping among women? I mean, it was socially acceptable,
It
or
was
was it a
very-
little bit risque?
in my community it was not common.
It was more in mine than it was in hers, because it was just more typical of the people.
Did you have
We
relatives?
had a bit of a, we had a bit of
A bit of a
prejudice
taboo.
against,
Uh-huh.
you know, in my community it wasn't socially acceptable. Somebody who dipped snuff was a bit on the wrong side,
Mhm. Yeah.
more so I guess than Daddy remembers.
Yeah, Daddy, can you slide that way just a little bit? You're getting sort of out of the picture. That's good.
Now my grandfather Frick was in the Civil War. You ready?
Now
for
this
it?
was Levi.
Levi Frick.
He was
My
captured
father's
right
brother.
before the end of the war and
Mhm.
in prison very briefly.
Right. But during the Civil War, it was not uncommon for the women to follow the men. My grandmother went with him to war, and she stayed behind the lines and cooked and kept him and washed his clothes and things like that. In other words, she kept house, so to speak, behind the lines for him while he was in battle. Took care of him the same as she
That
would.
seems like it would have been an organizational nightmare, though. I mean,
It had to be. They had to furnish their own things. It wasn't, you know, organized. Quite a bit of the taking care of the men was very unorganized in that war, because it was just a spontaneous volunteer thing, and they'd go. And my grandmother spent time
But
behind the
the-
lines.
the husband would leave his troops and go back to where his wife was cooking for him for his meals and that sort of thing. You're talking about.
That she either had to take it to him or he had to come back for it. It was a personal thing. To look out for your husband as best you could. Now, of course, this wasn't done
Yeah.
probably on a big scale, but my grandmother did it
Mhm.
right behind the lines.
Mhm. Was he the only ancestor of yours that was in the war that you know of?
The one I know best, I'm sure there must have been others, but I don't know the details on the others.
But now in your family there were a couple, weren't there?
Only one immediate,
Well, now in one of the family trees there was somebody killed in the war. Now he may have been a son. He may have been an offshoot. I just remember seeing a note in.
you see, my great-granddaddy was killed. Mama's granddaddy.
Now what was his name?
Frank Dunn's daddy.
Frank Dunn's
The
daddy.
Jane. Uh-huh.
He's the one that was never found out about where he
He's
where he
supposed to have been killed in the Hilton Head, South Carolina territory, but his body never was shipped home.
And that was Salina's husband.
What was Salina's husband's name?
James, I believe it was James.
James Dunn.
Frank's Dunn's daddy, but I believe I think it was James.
You sort of lost me there.
Flip to your tree.
See, I've got a tree to go to.
D.A. James, Salina James.
Salina died in 1900. Now, I want you to tell me if I'm correct in remembering something. I seem to remember sitting on the screen porch with your mother while she was alive and having her talk about the day that Salina died, or Salina's funeral, or something about that.
Isn't Salina the woman who sacrificed so, and she would not eat because there wasn't enough for everybody?
It was after he was killed and trying to recuperate.
She would fix what food they had, and then she'd sit the children down to the table and tell them she wasn't hungry. And because there wasn't enough food to go around, and she would give it to the children and do without herself quite often.
So she lived as a widow for
She was lived 35 years after the war was over.
Isn't she also the woman who never gave up on her husband coming back?
She always did think he'd be back.
She lived.
She never remarried.
She lived with the constant expectation or hope that he would be back.
She never heard anything from him.
Never heard an
His body
official
wasn't shipped
announcement.
back, and she doesn't know anything about his status, whatever. Never did know.
I think it was just the hope that kept her alive, maybe, you know.
Yeah. What do you recall? What information there is that he was killed at Hilton Head? Where did that information?
I don't know where that information came
But it's a
from.
definite impression that you had.
That's what's been reported the whole time. Do you remember where you got the information on that deer?
Let me look up Tim. If you want to stop the tape, maybe I'll look up Tim.
That's okay. I'll go ahead and think about Salina. Salina had a bunch of kids, I guess, when he went off to the Civil War.
She had
How old would your mother have been? Well, now your mother was born when?
maybe
Yes, excuse me just a minute. James Madison Dunn, Salina's husband, was killed in the Civil War at Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, and the body was never shipped home.
Yeah. But now, okay, I'm trying to get the genealogy straight. It was your mother's father who was one of Salina's kids. Is that right?
Right, Franklin Dunn.
Was he in a family with a bunch of kids?
see there was Doc,
Here they
Joe,
are, right here.
Frank, and
John.
What are the birth dates on them? Some of them were grown by the time of the Civil War. Doc was born.
1856.
So he was a little kid. She raised him.
1853.
He wasn't real old.
1859.
that's Grandpa.
1862, 1849, and they were all born before the Civil War. 1850.
Yeah, but there were a bunch of them that were young when he disappeared. So she had a bunch of little kids
Yeah.
to raise.
Well, that's it. You see, that's why there was no food.
The oldest one she had was that one born in 1849.
Right.
That was a girl.
That was a girl, right.
Lizzie Dunn Fur.
The two older were girls, so the boys, none of them were very old. And so
See, one of those boys died in '93. The house we were looking at yesterday.
Which one was? Died at the Allman place.
He died in '93.
Now she married a Fur. Would that have been in that family of Furs that we saw the gravestones at Herring Grove Cemetery? Or was there so many Furs?
I don't know. Aunt
Age,
Lizzie
it don't
married a
matter.
Fur, but I never did know who he was or who he was related to. Now, they are both buried in Bear Creek. I mean, Lizzie is.
Oak Grove United Methodist Church.
That's where
Salina.
Salina. Yeah, I've got a good picture of Salina's grave.
Okay.
But there was one characteristic. See, Grandpa was 6 years old. He was born in 1859. And when his daddy went off to Civil War, his daddy says, "Eat at my place till I get back."
That boy ate at his father's place.
Till he grew up and left home, I guess.
He kept that table and he wouldn't let that table go. So,
You know, it's strange to me, what the poverty level today is so far from real poverty that we knew, that it seems a bit almost comical at
To
times.
call it poverty.
Right. Because when we think about this kind of poverty that these people went through, and the Civil War and what they lived through with that, and after
You have a hard time thinking of yourself at poverty level today, considering where you come from, don't you?
Right. One day when I was teaching Sunday school down at Shiloh, you see most of those kids come from fairly comfortable financial circumstances. And I said something about poverty and how things were when I was young, and dating and so forth. And one boy spoke up and said, "I bet you didn't even have money to go out and eat." I said, "Go out and eat?" I said, "We didn't have money to eat at home." Yeah, I wondered how we got the money to go to movies. Did we ever go to a movie before we were married?
you never did even get to Salisbury.
We did get to Salisbury a few
There's
times.
a few times down at Lids and Luther's.
But we never, I can't remember us ever going to a movie.
We didn't go to a movie and we never eat at,
They couldn't understand what you did on a date if you didn't go to the movies or you didn't go out and eat. What in the world did you do on a date? All we did was hang around the house
Sure.
and walk the road and talk and so forth. Which a kid today would think was inconceivable, you know, that you didn't do something. But dating was simple then.
this James family here. That is a connection from the Jesse James crowd.
Is that true?
It's connection, yeah.
Which James is that? Your
Selena James.
Selena
Yeah,
James?
she was related to the
Yes.
she's from the Jesse James clan.
Is
His
that
great grandmother?
I had always pronounced her name Selina. Which did they call it?
I
Do you
don't
know?
really know.
Yeah,
I believe
I think
Grandma
so.
Page called it Selena.
It might have been.
I got all this from Grandma and Grandpa.
Mhm.
And
Yep, she was a sprout of the Jesse James clan.
Now, how is it that, let's see, now she's buried at Oak Grove
Oak
Methodist.
Grove.
What branch of the family was at that church, or why would she have been buried?
I
I remember when we were out looking at markers, she was about the only relative, the only close relative that was at that cemetery.
Her
most of them were not Methodist.
one of the Dunn boys was buried there. So we were told, you know, we hunted the grave and never could find it. But it is reported that this one that died in 1893
Was buried at,
is buried at
John.
Oak Grove. But and they said his grave was right close to the building. But you know, we hunted that thing and never could find it. It didn't have a permanent marker. And I don't know whether it's because they were living close to that area. You see, Joe was buried in there, and it isn't not too far from where they were living then to that church. And it could have been that they were living still in the same area, and that might have been the closest church to them.
We do have a picture, a fairly good picture of Franklin Lafayette. I guess we didn't get it right, but it's in the family history. Franklin Lafayette.
How far back, see in my case, I don't remember any of my great grandparents because the last surviving one that I had was Nancy Eagle, and she died when I was only 3. Isn't that right?
Right.
Did either of you have great grandparents that you remember?
No.
I remember my great step grandmother,
Now she was the
the
one
one
that,
that I was telling you about,
what was her name?
Emma Hudson.
Emma, who married
Joseph.
married Joseph. Who was
Joseph, my great grandfather. And came in and took over a big family and lived, and the family loved and adored her.
let's see. The family tree to get oriented on that.
See, I never had a great grandparent living after I got into this house.
Joseph Eagle. Now his,
Okay, this was, so you're talking about Eli Eagle's stepmother.
This is the real.
This is the real mother. The
mother.
woman you're
Right.
talking about is Eli
He
Eagle's
later
stepmother,
married-
who you remember.
Right.
And she raised a whole brew of kids after Mary Ann Wyatt.
She finished the
died.
ones that weren't grown and took care of him until his death. And then she went to work at the
Now, wait a
Jackson
minute,
Training
wait a
School.
minute. I was thinking that she married him when his wife had died at an early age, but his wife didn't.
No, she
No.
had, this is the wife who had the 12 or 14 kids.
But when did he marry,
Hudson,
Emma.
after this one died. After this one died.
well, he was 63 years old when she died. He must have remarried at a late age.
He did.
And was she much younger than he was?
Considerably, I would say.
So
I
she
don't
lived
know
on
her
to
dates.
when? When did she live to?
She lived till 1926.
I see. Okay, so that's why you knew her.
I don't know the date of her death, but Liv remembers seeing her.
Her husband was born in 1839, but she lived on to 1926.
1926.
And, but they couldn't have had any young kids by that time, by the time she married him, did they?
No.
Yeah, they were just,
No,
she was just,
no, the children
all the
weren't young.
stepchildren that she inherited were grown.
And all of them just treated her as a mother, and she treated them
Mhm.
as a mother, and they all dearly
And she
loved her.
lived long enough to build a fairly substantial relationship
Right,
with all of them.
right, very, very good relationship, better than a
Mhm.
lot of their real closer relatives,
Mm-hmm,
and helped with all the family chores and grandkids and so forth too.
mm-hmm.
Solana James, he was the only grandparent who ever lived after I was born. The Pages would have been Calvin, and that one's buried at the Hinkle Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the other great-grandparent is the one that was killed in the Civil War on Mama's side.
Mm-hmm.
So Solana James was the only grandparent that ever lived after I was born.
Your father was certainly born when his father was old. Levi Frick born in 1833. Chalmers born in 1882. That's 49 years old.
That wasn't rare.
Well, it's interesting though because it gets the family tree so much further back on one side than the other.
Right.
I mean,
When they had the child makes a
yeah,
world
your
of
grandfather. I
difference.
mean, he was your grandfather, but he was dead.
Well, you see,
long
I don't
before-
remember him.
He was dead. Well, he was dead long before your great grandparents on the other side.
See, it makes a tremendous
Sure.
difference whether you were born early in your parents' career or late in their career,
Mm-hmm.
and throws the, like you say, throws the family tree a generation apart. Really.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not rare at all for people to have children when the man was that age.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt Emma, who married my father,
Mm-hmm.
my father's
Right.
last wife,
Right.
she had children when her husband was over 80.
What husband was that?
Her last husband. She had 3
She
She,
Well,
re-
not-
re-
the
she
one before
remarried
my
again.
father. She was married to my father's brother first. She was my mother's sister, but she married. It was double wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a double
Right, double.
link there. And she married my father's brother the first time and had 4 children. Then
J.
she
Hughes
died.
was one of them. I mean,
She died, Fanny
J.
Hughes.
J. Hughes' wife.
Then she died when he died fairly young.
Mm-hmm.
And then she married a Morgan man and had 5 children by him. And the last of that family was born after he was 80 years old.
So he was way older than she
Curtis
was.
Morgan, don't you remember Kurt?
And then she married your dad after that.
And then she married my father after
But
that.
how old was he when she married him?
Dad,
Yeah.
They were married in 43.
about 64, wasn't
Okay. So she had had an 80-some-year-old husband and then married your dad when he was in
Uh-huh.
his 60s.
But that's the